Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Friday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. So glad you could join us for the next hour. I'm Paul Dottino, he's Matt Citak. And let's face it, folks, it's a different kind of weekend because it's Monday Night Football. The Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Giants this week. And, you know, the thing about it for us is it's really calendar Friday, but it's really football Thursday. So that meant today we got not only yesterday's injury report, but then we also got a chance to talk to the coordinators. Now, Mike Kafka, the offensive coordinator, is out there right now, so can't tell you what he's talking about. But we can tell you that Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator, has spoken. He said that the team did address the Tay Banks issue about not playing necessarily 100% on every single snap. It has been addressed. He said that Banks will play against Pittsburgh, was asked to clarify and said it's up to the head coach as to how they want to deal with it, and we will see how things go during the week. Obviously, practice habits are going to be part of this equation, however it turns out to be. And then as far as Michael Gabriel, the special teams coordinator, nothing specific from him other than he believes that both in the return game on punt return and also in punt coverage, would like to see better perimeter play. Outside the numbers on the perimeter. And those were the two things that I got from the coaches earlier this morning. Again, Mike Kafka is coming out there momentarily. And injury-wise, you know, we'll know a heck of a lot more. Remember now, this is a football Thursday. You get much more of the injuries tomorrow because it's a football Friday, even though it's a calendar Saturday. And that's where you really start to think about who may or may not play in the game.
Yeah, I mean, last week, Wednesday and Thursday of the practice week, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence were not out there. And then, sure enough, they got on the field Friday and both suited up and played well on Sunday. So we'll wait and see what the injury report says today. I mean, hopefully there are not any changes, or if there are any changes, there are guys taking steps in the positive direction towards, you know, getting onto the field Sunday and not the other way. But, yeah, tomorrow's injury report is definitely the one to keep an eye out on. We'll get the game statuses, see if anyone gets any injury designations heading into the game. I, for one, I'm looking forward to having a stress-free Sunday, getting to just watch some of the other games on Sunday before locking in on Monday for Monday Night Football.
That's because you're not a Yankees fan.
Well, the Yankees don't even play Sunday. So you get a day off from the World Series as well Sunday to just enjoy.
Are the Yankees off Sunday, John?
Yeah, they play tonight.
Oh, my goodness. See, I'm thinking
Saturday.
all along that we're going to be traveling to Pittsburgh on Sunday, and I got to worry about trying to find a place to watch the game.
No.
Friday, Saturday, Monday.
You get a full day
Wow.
off Sunday. Stress-free Sunday.
You watch all football Sunday. It's perfect.
Oh, that is good.
Yeah.
That is good. I've got my NFL Plus. I can watch
You get
everything I need to
Cowboys-Niners
watch.
Sunday
There you
night.
go.
Good Sunday
All right.
game.
Oh, very good.
You
Very
can get
good.
both teams at the same time. It'll be great.
Anyway, all right, good stuff. I see this combobulated schedule has totally messed with my brain. Then again, most people think that I could use some messing with the brain anyway. Folks, a couple of injuries to report from the Steelers, though, that we do not believe are going to change. Zach Frazier, their second-round pick, their rookie starting center, does have an ankle injury. The word out of Pittsburgh is he is not going to play. They don't even need to wait on his designation. They know he's not going to go. So Ryan McCullum, formerly from the Detroit Lions, would be the next in line to start. That obviously is quite a task for him, being that some dude named Dexter Lawrence has to line up on the other side. That's a task for every opponent, but certainly a guy who has not been the regular every down starter.
Yeah, and at least according to Steelers.com, Ryan McCullum, while he is 6'5", comes in at 300 pounds. You know,
That's
on
rather
Giants,
svelte, as they say.
On Giants.com, Dexter Lawrence is listed at 340. I've heard him say to the media, you know, at times this season that he is even higher than that 340 number.
But we're not at Thanksgiving yet.
So Dexter Lawrence could have, at a minimum, 40, probably closer to 50-plus pounds on this center. So we kind of saw a similar matchup, at least just in terms of size-wise, in week 1 against the Vikings with Garrett Bradbury. He's a little shorter, but he also comes in at around 300 pounds, and Dexter Lawrence dominated that matchup, although there haven't been many, you know, matchups against an opposing center this season that Dexter has not dominated.
How true. Also, Roman Wilson, hamstring injury, third-round pick, wide receiver. Also, very unlikely, based on the reports out of Pittsburgh, that he's going to be able to play. Again, he's not one of their top 3 receivers anyway, but he is a guy who has seen some playing time.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't played too much this season just because he's been dealing with injuries.
Correct.
Even before this current injury, I believe he had something else that held him out the first couple of games. So Calvin Austin will probably be their starting slot receiver, who has not done much this season. But George Pickens will...
Really good on returns, though, on special teams.
Very good returner. But the Steelers, like many other offenses around the league, sort of like rotating guys in and out of the slot. George Pickens lines up in the slot sometimes. Pat Freiermuth, their tight end, lines up in the slot. So Drew Phillips will have, I believe, a variety of matchups throughout the game, which the way he's been playing... I'm good with Drew Phillips lining up against anyone on the Steelers.
I don't have a problem with him either. Also, Nick Herbig, who is the third rotational end in this Steelers scheme. He is the first pass rusher off the bench, so to speak, much like when the Giants have Burns and Thibodeau and Ojulari is the third guy in the mix. That's what Herbig is. He is virtually out as well. Bad hamstring issue. And the folks out of Pittsburgh are saying that that could be a tad of an issue because, or a tad of a nasty situation for them because they do like to get him involved in the rotation on the pass rush.
Yeah, and last week's game against the Jets, that was the first time that the Steelers got Alex Highsmith back. He had missed the previous 3 games with an injury, returned against the Jets, was on the field for 74% of the snaps. You know, if the third guy in the rotation is missing, that I don't know how many more snaps Highsmith can get on. I mean, his season high was week 1 where he played 88% of the snaps. That number went down to 80 the following week. Obviously, the Steelers are going to want to keep Highsmith and, of course, TJ Watt on the field as much as possible. But everyone, you know, those guys are going to need a breather at some point. So the Steelers missing the next guy up sort of in their rotation, that could end up being big.
One other item, Cordarrelle Patterson, one of the great kickoff returners in NFL history. He's been fighting an ankle injury, has not been in the lineup for a couple of weeks. And so it remains to be seen. It doesn't look like he's going to play against the Giants, but I don't want to put anything definitive on that yet. The Steelers have not. And the press reports out of Pittsburgh, I saw something that conflicted, said there may be a chance he'd make it back this week. Of course, what the Giants seem to do strategically is to go touchback immediately. They like to put the kickoffs out of bounds anyway. So I don't know that Patterson will or not even have an impact on the game, even if he gets a jersey.
Yeah, well, I for one just don't want to see the ball in his hands on a kickoff. Just avoid it.
Do not kick it to him.
Just avoid it.
Yeah, I concur. Look,
I don't have much else to add other than that.
Well, when this new kickoff rule came in, I remember being kind of incredulous about so much that was being made about it because I said, if I'm the coach, I'm taking the touchback. That's it. I'm not even dealing with this thing. Just forget it. Just put it through the end zone, give it to him at the 30, and go from there. The Giants, I don't want to say that I can give you the exact number, but I'm pretty sure it's about 90% or more that they're going touchback. They're not letting the other team return those kickoffs. There's been very few.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like we've seen that across the league. Now, the NFL has said that kickoff returns are up from last year, but the number I last saw, it wasn't significantly higher than what it was last year. You know, it was maybe 5 to 10% more. I feel like teams will typically, for the most part, just kick the ball out of the end zone, and then maybe once or twice a game we'll try to like surprise the other team by kicking a ball that lands like, you know, right in front of the goal line or at the goal line, forcing the other team to return it.
Well, let's give you an example. Pittsburgh's opponents have 11 kickoff returns. The Giants' opponents have 5 kickoff returns for the season. Now, what I can't tell you right now, just from looking at the pure numbers we have, how many of those were in the end zone and brought out of the end zone. I don't think the Giants' opponents have had more than maybe 1 or 2 that were caught outside the end zone. I seem to remember a couple that might have come down at the 1 or 2 yard line.
I do remember at least one of Greg Joseph. So Greg Joseph has Well, he has 4 of the kickoffs that have been returned. And I remember at least one, I think it might have been, I don't know if it was his first one, but at least one of them was short of the end zone. Because I remember.
I want to think 2. I want to say 2, but it might just be 1.
I mean,
point is, the Giants are saying just boom the darn thing.
Yeah. Yes.
Anyway, 201-939-4513 is our phone number if you'd like to join us here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. We will go to line 1, and Big Ed from Maryland, we're going to kick off the program with you. Hello.
Hey, what's up, Big Paulie? How you doing, man?
I'm okay, my friend. How you been?
I am excited about my Yankees being in the World Series.
Hey, I'm with you 100%, although I was obviously so excited that I didn't even realize there was no game on Sunday. So that tells you where my mind is at. I'm still trying to deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday night. That comes first for me.
All right, Big Paulie, that's what I'm talking about, so let's get to it.
Okay.
All right. What is the few things that the Steelers have done well in these 7 games they played?
Few things?
What is
They're good.
Yeah, what are the few
They're
things
good.
they've
I'd
done
say
well?
there's more than a few things. They're a good team.
Right, they're a solid team.
Very solid team.
Listen, hey, Paulie, I had this game marked as the game that had to be won. This is one of those outside games that had to be won.
Okay.
Here's a circle for that. It's the Steelers. We're going to West PA on Monday night, one of the hardest places to play, especially on Monday night.
Give him the number, Matt. Give him the number. The streak. Give him the number.
Was it 21 straight games?
Monday Night Football in Pittsburgh. 21 wins in a row. And the last team to beat them is who, Matt?
The New York Football Giants.
In 1991. 23-20, Jeff Hostetler was the quarterback, and Rodney Hampton ran for 96 yards. And Mark Collins threw in an interception in that game, by the way.
Yes, indeedy. I'm about to go look at the highlights off of that one, boy. You get me goosebumps.
Now he's salivating. Big Ed, I just wanted to make your day, man. That's all.
Like, I know, Paulie. Why does it feel like I'm gonna leave after this one? But why I feel like when games are on the line like this one, right? And just like it was for Seattle and then going to Cleveland, why are we always seeming to pull together and want to win it? Versus these other games where we got challenges. Because I can understand we was real high up. We won in Seattle. We played our best ball. Good. But we did not meet Cincinnati's grit. And that's the biggest thing for us on Monday night. Meet them at their grit. You got to hit them at the point of contact. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers, not the Ponies.
Right.
They going to play hard every single step. So you got to play them harder. It's like, remember how I said about Harbaugh and how he's not stupid, right? And he'll do stuff. Well, Mike Tomlin, he's pretty much a straight coach. That's what we've always seen from him. So, honestly, Paulie, attack. Attack with the passing game. You got to go with the deep ball. That's a key. The running backs is the undercut. Throwing them screen routes. That's another key. For the most part, that's it. And we just got to stay healthy throughout it. But, yeah, man, thanks, y'all. I'll holler at you on Monday or next week sometime, Paulie. We're gonna want these Yankees to win.
Okay, Big Ed. All right, man. Have a great weekend. One of the things that the million-dollar question that's been asked around here, make it the billion-dollar question, is what about the difference between the home Giants and the road Giants? I don't have an answer for you. Matt won't have an answer either. None of us do. But I do know this. When asked about that specific issue, there's little doubt that Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, and Daniel Jones all said this week when they were asked to address this thing in complete focus, they all did say there is a galvanizing thing about playing on the road because, it's your us against the world mentality. And, Burns, Lawrence, Jones, they all indicated there is something to that mentality. They're not using that as an excuse for not playing well at home. I don't want to misrepresent what they said. But they clearly did say that when you're on the road, it's fun. You've got us against everybody else. The whole building's against you. Everybody's rocking against you, and you are aware of that. It is a different atmosphere. And Lord knows Chris Hubbard, who just got to the Giants and spent the first handful of his years as a Pittsburgh Steeler, is certainly doing his best to tell his teammates exactly what they're in for, because many of them have never played against the Steelers on the road before. And that is a great football environment.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Burns is one of those guys that has never played in Pittsburgh. He talked about it when he spoke to the media yesterday, and he was asked, as you just said, why do you think the team has played better on the road? Like, is it a mentality thing or whatever? And he said, like, I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, anytime we have an away game, I kind of go into it with a screw it attitude. You're going into a hostile environment, and that, as you said, it's like us against the world. I mean, I feel like we've heard guys over the years talk about there's no better feeling than silencing an away stadium's crowd. When you have a hostile crowd that you can make a big play and just make the entire stadium basically go silent, that is like the best feeling. I've heard numerous players say things along those lines. So, yeah, Brian Burns is one of those guys who said he's very excited to see what this, hostile Pittsburgh environment is going to be like. And, he said he was looking forward to it now. We'll see Monday night when it gets really loud there, if he feels the same way. But again, he's the type of player he can make one big play and completely silence that crowd.
Indeed he can, and it should be noted, he's been limited now for a couple of weeks, dealing with a sore groin and also now dealing with an Achilles. I will tell you, I think Brian Burns, not only has he been a joy to work around and to cover, because he's a very affable guy, very well-spoken, really enjoyed talking to him, very respectful. But he's one heck of a teammate. You can tell how well he's melted into this locker room. And he is a really good player. I mean, to watch him down by down. And as I've often said, many pass rushers will sell out just trying to get to the quarterback. You watch Brian Burns on a play-in, play-out basis, Matt. He's not only a very, very talented pass rusher and has an immense amount of skills to get after the passer, he also plays the run extremely well. He is a very well-rounded player, and I think the Giants must be thrilled, not only that they were able to get him in the trade from Carolina, but that he has been tied up now for the rest of his prime years in the league.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he got off to, I would say, a little bit of a slow start the first couple weeks of the season. First 2 weeks, didn't really have too much of an impact. But in the 5 games since, he has 4 sacks. He has 8 quarterback hits, including multiple quarterback hits in 3 different games. I saw this stat that the 33rd team put out, and it said the most disruptive players through the first 7 weeks of the season. And the way that they categorize a disruptive player is counting the number of plays that resulted in a sack, tackle for loss, forced fumble, interception, or pass breakup.
Okay. Not pressures, though.
Not pressures.
Or quarterback hits.
Or quarterback hits.
Okay.
No, these are like actual impact plays.
Well, those are pretty impactful plays, too.
They definitely are.
But I get your definition. Okay,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Brian Burns comes in at number 6 in the entire NFL.
Not just as an edge rusher, but overall
The
league.
entire league, all defenders. He has 13 of these quote-unquote havoc plays, and that ranks as the 6th most, one behind Will Anderson and TJ Watt, who are tied for 4th. So despite the bit of a slow start, Brian Burns has been everything this team could have hoped for over the last 5 games. He seems to just be heating up now. I mean, we saw it kind of get started in Cleveland when he had that strip sack, and he sort of just never looked back. And, even with Kayvon Thibodeau on injured reserve and no longer playing opposite him, he hasn't missed a beat. I mean, Azeez Ojulari stepped in, and the two of them both have sacks in back-to-back games.
Yes.
Brian Burns has sacks in 3 straight games even.
Well, here's the thing about Burns. I find it's not only that he's incredibly athletic and quick, but he has an alertness and an instinctiveness to be around the football. And not everybody does that, because a lot of times what will happen with linebackers, and even though he's an edge rusher, so he's up on the line a lot, if you're not quick as a cat to recognize the play and to recognize how to find your way through all of the other bodies, you could easily be delayed and get caught and then not be in on the play. Burns gets in on the play very quickly. Just watch. He's a very impressive athlete. He's just a really, really impressive guy to watch. And I'm having a lot of fun just watching him every day. I really am.
Yeah, me too. And I enjoy, honestly, hearing him in the locker room too. I mean, despite the fact that he's been on the injury report the last couple of weeks, he's still been out there every single game, giving it his all. I mean, that's the type of, toughness that you hope to see from everyone. I mean, even with dealing with this injury, I mean, he's had, a groin injury, now added an Achilles injury. Last week was the lowest percentage of snaps that he's played on the season, and he still played 65%. And that's with only practicing on a limited basis on Friday.
Right.
And that's it. Every other game, he's been over 80% of the snap. So this guy is tough as nails. He's continuing to make an impact despite clearly dealing with some ailments, but he's not letting it slow him down. And honestly, that's every football team would sign up for a locker room full of guys that can do that.
I just want to know one thing that Brian Burns hasn't done yet. He hasn't played through dealing with allergies like some of us have to do. It's been dry here, folks. For those of you who are not from our area and are watching us on the web or listening to us on the web from other parts of the country or even around the world, and we know we do have some international fans, especially in Germany, which is where the Giants are going to play in Munich in 3 weeks with Carolina. It's been dry here. We haven't had rain in weeks, and the dryness really does something to your throat, and then all the stuff that's in the air, it's not getting washed away by any rain, so it becomes a real allergy issue. I know John's had a couple of real rough days this week, and I'm kind of having one today, but we're gonna get through it. One other item to mention besides that streak that the Steelers have on Monday Night Football, and I'm a real stickler for this particular item because I believe, like Tom Coughlin does, more games in this league are lost than they are won. The Pittsburgh Steelers have only 7 drops on the season as a team. Okay? The Giants are up to 20 already, which is the second most in the league now. I believe Cleveland is at 22. They are now number 1. The Giants are now number 2. You can't self-sabotage your chances. And that's one of the things the Giants are going to have to do when they go into Pittsburgh and try to take this game. They can't get sloppy. They can't make those kinds of mistakes and give up first downs or give up scoring position with a drop. They can't do it. Pittsburgh is not going to reciprocate and make those mistakes back and even the field for the Giants. They simply won't, okay? Pickens is another one of those big, strong receivers who gets the ball when it's thrown to him. He's not going to drop. He's got 3 on the season. I get it. For him, he's probably ticked off that he's got 3. But that guy like A.J. Brown is going to make plays downfield. And if you think he's covered, he's not. He's getting the ball.
Yeah, John and I touched on this yesterday. He's one of those guys where you just throw the ball up in his vicinity, and there's a very good chance he's going to come down with the football. I mean, he reminds some of his receptions he's made not only this year, but since he entered the NFL 2 years ago. This is his 3rd season now. He's the sort of guy where you just throw the ball up and he's able to contort his body in the air to make this incredibly acrobatic, impressive catch and get his feet down in bounds. There are not many receivers in the NFL right now that can sort of contort their body in the air like we've seen George Pickens do numerous times. I mean, we saw it Malik Neighbors do it in week 3, his touchdown catch against the Browns, where he contorted his body, somehow made the catch, and was able to twist his body and still get both feet down in bounds. George Pickens seemingly makes a catch like that every game. He is very, very talented. He's fast. He's big. He can jump high. He's a tough matchup for any cornerback in the NFL. And, we expect Deonte Banks to be matched up on him for most, if not the entire game.
Yeah.
And that, just chalk that up as just another one of these very tough wide receiver matchups that Deonte Banks is facing this season. I mean, the gauntlet of receivers he's already been matched up with is quite the list. And, George Pickens is just the next name to add.
I saw a number the other day. I guess Tay Banks has been shadowing the top receiver. Did I see 85% of the time or 83% of the time?
Something like that, yeah.
I mean, he has been a traveling corner. And of corners who have started at least 4 games in the league this year, he's got the highest percentage of shadows. So he's going to be on Pickens. let's not kid ourselves. Now, the interesting part about Pickens is that he had actually been kept somewhat in check earlier this season. The last 2 weeks, though, over 100 yards and a touchdown apiece. So,
I mean, especially last week's performance is noteworthy because it was the first time Russell Wilson was under center.
And
nothing against Justin Fields, who's a good quarterback, but in terms of pure passing, Russell Wilson is a much better pure passer than Justin Fields. And Russell Wilson under center threw for 260 yards. I think 110 or 120 of them went to George Pickens last week.
Indeed. And what does Wilson specialize in?
The moon ball.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. The way he drops that sucker in the bucket is really scary. And if you watched what Hurts did when he dropped the ball right into the basket for A.J. Brown last week over Nick McLeod, who had pretty decent coverage on the play. I mean, he wasn't on him, but he was close enough. It wasn't bad. Had the ball not been perfect, it may not have been completed. But it was right there. Well, guess what? This guy, Russell Wilson, who I was not a big fan of early in his career, thought he was strictly a system quarterback, has proven me wrong. He's absolutely been a phenomenal quarterback for a long time. That moon ball, that ability to lollipop that throw downfield and put it on the head of a pin is ridiculous. It really is, because he does it so consistently.
Yeah, it's very impressive. I mean, there's a reason why people think he could be headed to Canton one day. We'll see, but
he's got a real good chance.
He does. He's a very talented quarterback still, even with his, we'll call it somewhat advanced age as a quarterback.
Say it. He's old. It's okay.
Trying to put it nicely.
Say it.
Because he's still good. So,
but he's old.
I will say though that there is a good way to sort of not cancel out, but fight back to these impressive moon balls, because in order for those plays to develop, Russell Wilson needs time in the pocket.
Yes, he does.
He holds the ball longer than most quarterbacks in the NFL, and he's one of the highest if holding the ball more than 2.5 seconds. And the Giants, on the flip side, have the highest sack rate when opposing quarterbacks have held the ball for 2.5 or more seconds. So if the Giants can continue, the pass rush can continue to perform like it has been doing, I'm not going to say that it's going to completely take away, those Russell Wilson moonballs, but he's not going to have the time to let those plays develop. So I don't think we would see as many of them if the pass rush can hit home, which, of course, for any given week, it's a big if, but they just need to keep doing what they have been doing. And at least in terms of the pass rush, I would be pretty confident that they'll be able to get pressure on Russell Wilson.
I'll give you one other number about this particular subject in the game. The Steelers tied for 18th in the league with only 15 sacks so far this year. The Giants, obviously, number one with 31, which is more than double. You don't need a calculator to figure that out. Giants, have been leading the league in sacks now for several weeks. So, yes, you would think the Giants have a better chance of getting home and nailing Wilson than maybe Pittsburgh might have against Jones, even though there were 8 sacks by Philly last week. I know I talked to Joshua Azudu yesterday specifically about the Eagles game. He started at left tackle, as we know, and he admitted to me he was very, very nervous and does believe that was a big contributor to the 2 sacks that he gave up in the first quarter of the game. He settled down after that. I mean, the Giants threw the whole day, and he did do a much better job after those first 2 were out of the way. He had some jitters, and I get that. It was a tough spot for him to be in. Pittsburgh is going to be a tough spot too. He's got to get over those jitters before that opening kickoff, because if he's not, Highsmith, who's going to be on his side, will take advantage of it. He's quick. He's athletic. He gets to the quarterback. And Pittsburgh isn't going to pull any punches here. Even though they are not a heavy blitz team, they're going to line their guys up where they want to line them up. Watt's going to be more on the over on the Luminor's side. Highsmith is going to be on the side of Vizudu. So the thing about Pittsburgh is they're not trying to trick you. They just come at you and they say, okay, try to stop us.
Yeah, and that's a tough challenge for any, offense and offensive line. Alex Highsmith, 14.5 sacks in 2022. That's
good.
A pretty good number. And
he's good.
Led the league or tied for the league lead with 5 forced fumbles that season too. Now, last year, I would say took a bit of a step back, only had 7 sacks, but he clearly is still a very talented edge rusher, especially being the number 2 edge rusher for the team, because obviously TJ Watt is the top guy, one of the best defensive player, one of the best players, period, in the NFL. And so Coach Dable actually just met with the media in his weekly flyby, the day that the coordinators speak. And this is a little bit of concerning news. He said that Jermaine Illuminor will not practice today due to a groin injury, and that Evan Neal will take the first team reps at right tackle.
See, this is what happens when we get caught in the studio doing your show, or our show, for you, I should say. We don't get necessarily those tidbits that are coming off the patio. That's a bit of a problem.
Yeah. Now, Brian Dable did say that they are still hopeful that he will be able to go. And one of the beats said that while talking to Jermaine in the locker room yesterday, Jermaine said that there was, quote unquote, no way that he was going to miss this game.
And I believe that.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully this is a situation similar to, what I was talking about before with what we saw last week. Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence missed 2 days of practice, came back as a limited participant on Friday, and then played well. Hopefully that is the case with Illuminor, whether he's, on the practice field tomorrow or they decide to give him another rest day. As long as he can get back on the field by Monday, then, then it's okay. Or, better, I guess, than the alternative. Obviously, you want your best players out there. But if not, and he's unable to go, well,
Step up Evan
the
Neal.
people that have been clamoring since Andrew Thomas went down for Evan Neal to be thrown out there to see what he can do, you might get your wish.
By the way, according to my film study, I've got Illuminor only giving up 1 sack this year, and that was last week.
Yep.
It's the only one I've got.
PFF agrees with you.
He has been solid.
Very solid.
I'm not talking about all pro now, and that's not what they expected when they brought him in here. They expected a guy who was going to be solid, functional, and someone who you didn't really have to be concerned about. And that's exactly what he's given them.
He has lived up to that billing to a T.
So excellent job by Illuminor to this point, and hopefully he'll continue to produce at that level should they be able to get him on the field against the Steelers. And if not, hey, Evan Neal, that's your chance. That's your chance. I mean, I think I've talked to him enough the last couple of weeks to know that if he does get a shot to get in there, he's going to give it everything he's got. I really do believe that. I don't know how it's going to turn out if he's got to play, but I can guarantee you the effort will be maxed out. I guarantee you that.
Yeah, he'll be ready to go. Again, as you said, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that the production will follow, but at least in terms of being ready, like Evan Neal will be mentally, physically ready to roll if his number is called.
201-939-4513. Phil in North Carolina. You're next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hello.
Hello, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
And, appreciate the show as usual. A long
Thank you.
time, very long time listener. So I like to look at this thing like big picture in terms of where we are in terms of our roster compared to like 3 years ago, 6 years ago, 9 years ago. I still feel like we're like oscillating around a poorly average roster, and our personnel hasn't improved. There's been two or three minor upticks, I would say, with the recent roster. One is that we're young, so there's a little bit more hope. at 3, 6, 9 years ago. Maybe we weren't, especially 9 years ago. And I feel like our free agency signings have improved. But I feel like the most important part, the draft, hitting on enough people, we're still very, very poor in terms of that. You know, this last one being a glimmer of hope, but at least the 22, 23 has been poor. With regard to that, I also feel like because our percentages are so low, we should not be going up and grabbing people and going picks unless it's for like a quarterback. But like for example, Deontay Banks, we could have stayed pat and got Porter and saved the draft pick. So anyway, what's your thoughts?
Well, if you just want to talk about the draft class, this is the third year of the machine. And you know the rule. The rule of thumb is 3 years before you really decide to give any grades to any of a GM's draft class. Well, we're only in the first half of the third year of Dable and Shane's first class. Therefore, the only grade they have is incomplete. There is no grade yet. So I would say that your feelings are definitely premature, and that once the book is closed on guys like Wan'Dale Robinson, Cordell Flott, Bellinger, Belton, McFadden, Thibodeau, these are all guys in the first draft class that were taken in 2022. They're all here. I mean, who's not here? The entire 22 draft class. Am I missing somebody?
Marcus McKeithen.
McKeithen got hurt and is gone.
No longer here.
No, I'm talking about 2022.
Yeah, McKeithen was 2022.
Am I missing something? Oh, all the way down. You're right.
You just have to scroll down.
You're right. McKeithen and Beavers.
Yeah.
The last two picks. You're right.
And a Zudu, right?
He's here.
Zudu's here.
He's here. Thibodeau, Neal, Robinson, Azudu, Flott, Bellinger, Belton, McFadden, Davidson. 9 guys still here. Picks 10 and 11 are not. And both 10 and 11 got significant injuries that sidetracked their careers.
Yeah, look.
What's there to be down about?
I want to take this draft class by draft class since the caller brought this up. 2022, and I said this yesterday with John on the show. Yes, that was Joe Schoen's first draft. Yes, general manager, he had final say, but he got hired at the end of January. And this is, standard procedure when a general manager comes in for the draft that is occurring, 3 months later. The general manager will typically keep most, if not all, of the front office that was already there. The scouts, every position. And so Joe Schoen in that first draft, and it's not a full excuse, but he didn't have, what I would think he would consider necessarily all of his guys in the building to help him with all the scouts and stuff. So even with that said, as Paul just mentioned, there are still big time contributors to the 2024 Giants that were part of that draft class. I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau, obviously he's hurt right now, but was looking like he was on his way to a very, solid third year. Wan'Dale Robinson has been incredibly solid, save for a couple of drops. Even the Evan Neal pick, at that time, everyone thought that was the safe. We've spoken about this so many times. At the time of the 2022 NFL draft, everyone thought that Evan Neal was just about the safest pick in the draft. I mean, there were times leading up to that draft where people thought he could go number 1 overall. And the other offensive lineman that was in the conversation for being the first one taken, Ekwonu on the Panthers, hasn't been good either. And those are the top 2 tackles in that draft that everyone thought these 2 guys could be the safest picks in the draft. So, while the book is not closed on Evan Neal, but any team would have gotten that one, potentially wrong, I guess, if you want to call it that. But Cordell Flott has shown, especially this season, has shown flashes of growth and development. Micah McFadden has been one of the most consistent defenders on this team all season, even going back to last year. Dane Belton has shown flashes. So I'm with you. It's way too early to say that even that first draft class of Joe Shane's is, a bust, or you're not where the players you want them to be. Like, I don't necessarily agree with that. And for last year's draft class, again,
well, 6 out of 7 are still here, and Owens is on the practice squad.
Yeah, again,
so that's 7 out of 7 if you want to count him.
Way too early to be saying that guys are, a bust or not living up to the expectations when they're in 7 games in to their second season in the NFL. It takes longer than that for a lot of guys to develop. And so I don't think it's fair to, close the book on any of those guys from last year.
No.
And then you go to this year's class, which at least I'm glad, Phil, you mentioned that this class has shown a lot of promise, because Malik Neighbors, I don't think any Giants fan can say that they're disappointed with that draft pick. Tyler Nubin leads the Giants in tackles and is right up there with Micah McFadden as being potentially the most consistent player on the defense, has one of the lowest missed tackle rates.
Dexter would have something to say about that. And so would Brian Burns.
I said one of, not the most.
One of.
One
okay.
of.
Okay.
And I wasn't saying most talented. I'm just saying just most consistent. I mean, Tyler Nubin has led the team in tackles each of the last 3 weeks.
Been terrific.
With 9 total tackles each game. Drew Phillips looks like an absolute steal in the 3rd round, already showing that he can be a very good slot corner. Again, 6 games into his NFL career, 5 games into his NFL career, because he missed a little bit of time. And then those are just the first 3 picks. And also, all 3 of those guys, Pro Football Focus every week updates their list of the top rookies of the season through the first 7 weeks of the season, and it's a top 15 list. Malik Neighbors, Drew Phillips, Tyler Nubin, all 3 of them are in the top 15. And these are rookies from every single team across the NFL. 3 of the top 15 so far this season. And that doesn't even include Tyrone Tracy, who has shown a lot of promise and a lot of potential, and Theo Johnson and Darius Musow. So to say that, that Joe Shane and the front office's draft picks have not been good the last few years, I just do not agree with that at all.
Yeah. I think we just hit you with an avalanche of evidence that counters the point you try to make. And look, I appreciate the 1-loss record being frustrating. There's no question about that. But you got to be really careful about where you start slicing this thing, because going there in that particular area, you'd be misguided. And quite honestly, I will say this, and I've had this conversation with more than one football guy who, I have a tremendous Rolodex of football guys over the years. This 2022 playoff team that we often talk about that beat Minnesota in the first round on the road in the playoffs, you look at the players 1 to 53. Now, the big drop-off for the Giants would be Leonard Williams and Saquon Barkley are not here anymore. Those are the big drop-offs that they're missing from the 2022 team. They don't have anybody here at the defensive end position or the running back position that can even hold a candle to those 2 players. That goes without question. But if you look at the roster in its entirety from 1 to 53, this is a younger, more talented, higher upside roster than the one that won the playoff game. And that's pretty legit.
Yeah, I agree. And, you brought up some of those guys that are no longer here. Like, if Leonard Williams was still a Giant, Brian Burns would not be.
Well,
it
that's
just financially,
the cap.
Yeah, financially, it just would be impossible to make that work. So with Dexter Lawrence being obviously the stalwart and the anchor of the defense, Brian Burns is arguably a better fit. I mean, as we saw, how much success can you have if your 2 main pass rushers are both coming from the interior instead of having at least one of the main guys being an edge player?
And Burns is younger than Williams, by the way.
He's younger, and it's already shown the Giants lead the NFL in sacks. So
right.
In terms of
impact,
in terms of Leo, as much as we love Leo, he's
big
a
fan.
Great player,
big fan,
and a great person. But I think it's pretty obvious that Brian Burns is a better fit for the 2024 the defense that the Giants are running. And obviously, when it comes to Saquon, Saquon's one of the best running backs in the NFL when healthy. No one has ever argued that point.
Nope.
He's great. But the Giants decided they needed to allocate resources elsewhere. As we've talked about so many times, the Giants wouldn't have the veteran offensive line that, for the most part, has been performing well, and especially before Andrew Thomas went down, was performing, much better than the expectations of a lot of people from outside this building. They wouldn't be able to have been able to afford to sign those guys if they had re-signed Saquon. And the only other player I'll mention is Xavier McKinney, who was part of that 2022 team, and he's obviously gotten off to a fantastic start with the Packers, leads the NFL in interceptions, and he's great. But again, financially, you look at the contract he ended up signing, there's no way that the Giants could have afforded to keep him and also add these other pieces. And if McKinney was still here, then Tyler Nubin wouldn't be.
Correct.
And I'm not saying Tyler Nubin is as good as Xavier McKinney, because he needs to develop and grow to hopefully one day reach the level that Xavier McKinney is at. But he's also on a salary that's, a 30th of the price of Xavier McKinney? So in terms of building out your roster, as we've talked about, as Joe Shane has talked about, it's like a puzzle that you have to put the pieces together.
The safety
you
position,
can't just throw money at every single position.
The safety position, the two starters here, and even the third guy, Dane Belton, who, by the way, was a 2022 draft pick, that is not a problem for this team. The safety spots are in solid hands. So that's why I didn't bring up McKinney. There's a significant drop-off from Leonard Williams to any of the defensive ends the Giants have. But you're right. His money was shifted around and then wound up going to Brian Burns.
Yeah.
So that's a great point.
And Burns is still lining up on the edge.
Yeah, he's an edge rusher. So I was simply going position by position.
Yeah,
Those are your two drop-offs. Now, we should remind folks, the Giants Huddle, all kinds of long-form interviews. Again, Giants and NFL personnel. You can find it on all your favorite podcast platforms. Go to giants.com/podcasts. And, of course, the Giants season ticket memberships are still out there if you should want to try to make it to some games. Not just on game day, but the memberships give you all kinds of exclusive benefits. Visit giants.com/tickets. And then finally, Giants TV is the official connected streaming app on the internet. It is free on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and also all of your favorite iOS and mobile apps. So check it out. And hopefully you get some good stuff and good viewing through the Giants TV app. One other item I did want to stress about this game. It referred to the defensive side of the ball. Because when I was looking at some of the numbers going through my research, Giants were doing really, really well earlier this season in terms of keeping their missed tackle numbers down. Now, as you've heard me say on this program dozens of times, maybe hundreds of times over the years, 5 or 6 missed tackles a game is probably right around the number that you want to be. If you can keep it under that, great. But about 6 or so is about the tolerance point for most coaches. Well, the Giants are now at 43 missed tackles for the season, which is the 13th highest in the league, which puts them somewhat in the middle of the pack. Mm-hmm. Okay? But do the average. That's 6 a game, right?
Yep.
Okay. So they were doing real well, and now they're kind of in the middle and then the average. So they've been having some trouble with missed tackles lately. Why do I bring this up? Against the Pittsburgh Steelers, Pittsburgh has 26 missed tackles this season, according to Sports Radar. I don't track their missed tackles. I'm relying on Sports Radar to do that for me. That is the second fewest in the National Football League. 26. Think about that for a second. That's under 4 a game. You can't be sloppy against this team because they're not going to be sloppy against you. In other words, the Steelers will not beat themselves. And that's probably the biggest point that I'd like to raise to everybody looking at this game on Monday night. Pittsburgh will let you beat yourself, or Pittsburgh will flat out beat you. They are not going to beat themselves. That's not going to happen. Mike Tomlin teams don't usually do that anyway, and they're certainly not doing that in 2024. So I raise that as an issue, Matt, because if the Giants are going to be sloppy in any way, shape, or form, it's going to badly cost them.
I'm glad you brought up the missed tackles because Najee Harris, I would say not the perfect running back out there, but he's obviously a very hard, tough-nosed runner.
Forceful.
Yeah, not afraid to, take a hit and try to bounce off a defender. He currently ranks third in the NFL with 30 missed tackles forced on the season.
That's a big number.
That is a big number. The only two players that have more missed tackles forced on running plays are James Conner of Arizona and Jordan Mason of San Francisco. So, yeah, the Giants are going to need to have some sound tackling. They can't afford to, miss tackles and let Najee break a tackle, and because that's the only way that Najee Harris is going to bust out a big run is if he breaks a tackle and then there's no other defender there to sort of clean up the play. The other stat I wanted to just point out is that going back to the pass rush, which we know has been successful, the Giants are one of only two teams this season, with the other being the Seattle Seahawks, that have 3 different edge rushers with 15 or more total pressures. And that obviously is Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, who's currently on IR, and Azeez Ojulari.
That's why that stat becomes hollow, because one of the guys isn't here.
No, I know, but it's still for the season.
I know, but it doesn't help them on Monday.
It does not help them this Monday, no. But Kayvon will be back at some point. And
when he does, bring that stat back out.
Okay, I will.
But right now, that's not the case. We saw some of Patrick Johnson last week.
Yeah.
In the game against Philadelphia.
Tomon Fox.
And Fox had a sack, too.
Picked up a sack. Was only out there for a couple of plays and picked up a sack on one of them.
So, we know that Burns is limited in practice, and he's not playing 100% of the snaps on Monday. He's just not.
No.
And Ojulari's not going to either.
No.
So, whichever one of those other two guys winds up absorbing the most of the remaining snaps, they've got to be productive. You cannot take plays off against Najee Harris and company. You can't do it.
No. And here is a stat that does fit into what we're discussing about. So the Giants, when blitzing this season, have generated the 5th highest pressure rate when sending a blitz. Now, they don't always blitz, obviously, the blitzing numbers have been down pretty significantly, at least compared to what they were last year when they were blitzing every other play, basically. But when they do blitz, the Giants have had success of at least getting pressure. Now, we know pressure doesn't always lead to positive results for the defense.
True.
But obviously, if you're sending a blitz, you'd rather your guys get into the face of the quarterback and create some pressure than the alternative. So they need to continue that on Monday night. We just talked about it. Brian Burns won't be out there every single play. Azeez won't be out there every play. Well, one way to sort of help with, your edge rushers not being out there every play is sometimes sending a blitz. And when you do send a blitz, making a creative blitz that has a good chance of at least getting into the face of the quarterback.
Now, on the flip side, and then I want to get to Bruce in Virginia in just a second, I do want to bring this up because the other day when John and I were on Monday, and he said, did you realize that Philadelphia did not pick up any of their 8 sacks with a 5 or 6 man pass rush? They were all with 4-man rushes. Now, at that point, I had not gone over my tape review yet. So when I went over my tape review and I decided, all right, I'm going to pay extra attention to those because I want to see not only if John had seen it correctly, but also, what was done on those sacks that made it a little bit more difficult for the Giants to deal with. As it turned out, of the 8 sacks that Philadelphia had, 3 of them were zone blitzes. Now, they did send 4 on all the blitzes. But on all the sacks, on all 8 of the sacks, they did send a 4-man rush. But 3 of them were zone blitzes where they mugged a rusher and dropped somebody out and wound up sending 4 anyway. Now, what a zone blitz does, it confuses the offensive line because they're going to send the same amount of people. The problem is you just don't know which one's coming because guys are dropping out and guys are coming in. And that winds up screwing up assignments. The Giants got burned on 3 zone blitzes against the Eagles. Well, why do I bring this up? Because the Pittsburgh Steelers on passing downs blitz only 19% of the time, which is 28th most in the NFL. They're not sending extra. They don't need to.
Nope.
Okay? They're a really good, sound, fundamental defense without taking the risk of sending extra guys. So their sack number is very low, as we talked about, tied for 18th in the NFL with 15. So technically kind of in the middling part of the stat. But they're not taking chances. I would suspect after what they saw on tape last week with Philadelphia, I would expect a lot of zone blitzes. They may not send extra guys, but they're going to mug a lot of guys. And that is going to be an issue that they're going to try to use to confuse the Giants' assignments. That's what I would do if I were the Steelers' defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and when you just look at who they have in their pass rush up front, like, as you said, they don't need to send blitzes. We've talked about T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith. We haven't even mentioned Cameron Hayward.
No.
Who is a
Did not even
absolute force in the interior line.
You remember when the Giants got Burns and I said this is such a big key because it takes your defense to a whole nother level. It opens up an entirely new area of the playbook because now you have 3 guys on the line that people have to respect. Thibodeau, Burns, and Lawrence. And when I said they have one of the top threesomes in the league, they were joining the Steelers because the Steelers are already there with Hayward and Watt and Highsmith. This is what put the Giants up in that category when you talk about the defensive front.
Yeah, with you 100%.
Okay, we go to Bruce from Virginia. You're last on the program. Hello.
Hello. It's great to talk to you guys. Got a great show.
Thank you, Bruce. We have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. So my point is, if I was ownership, I'd go to Dable and say, look, you're calling the plays hasn't worked, and you need to have someone else call the plays, and you can suggest plays, but you need better play calling, better line play, and I think the switch needs to be made. So that's my comment.
Okay. Well, thanks for the phone call. Ownership will not get its hands in the salad. That's not the way they operate in terms of the Giants organization. The coach will make those decisions on his own, but I appreciate the opinion, and if he had the money and could be an owner of a team, he could certainly do that if he so chooses.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think the play calling has been the issue on offense. Obviously, as Brian Dable would be the first one to say, that the offense has not been anywhere close to where anyone wants it to be, but I don't think that's from necessarily bad play calling. I mean, it's more of execution. I mean, we've seen guys drop plays, like we've seen wide receivers run routes on 3rd down short of the sticks and get tackled a yard or 2 short of a first down, when if you ran it a yard or 2 further, made the catch, then they would have extended the drive. Like, I feel like it maybe has been masked because the team is 2-5 and the offense hasn't been playing that well, but I feel like in like the 2 wins that the Giants have, after the game, Brian Dable was being complimented by, local reporters, national media analysts about how creative and great the play calling was. So obviously It's easier to say that after a win than a loss, and there have been more losses than wins this season. But I really don't see how the play calling has been the issue with the offense this year.
Folks, that'll do it for this edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. Again, we will be back on Monday.
Tuesday. There's no show Monday.
No show Monday?
No show Mondays. And you're not here. I'm not coming in. Pearson's in Pittsburgh.
Everybody's taking off.
Are you in Pittsburgh, Pierce? Yeah. So no show Monday, but we'll be back Tuesday. I don't know who's going to be on, but we'll be two people will be sitting here on Tuesday.
Well, thanks for telling me, fellas. I'll be in Pittsburgh, so I had absolutely no idea that you were going to be a ghost town here in East Rutherford, but apparently they will be holding a ghost town day in East Rutherford as the Giants prepare for Monday Night Football and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kickoff is at 8:20, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, which means 2 hours earlier, you get the WFAN Radio Giants pregame show. 2 hours after the game for the WFAN radio post-game show.
Sorry, 8:15.
8:15.
So 6:15.
I'm off by 5 minutes.
So 6:15.
Okay, and the MSG post-game live goes for 1 hour. I'll be there with locker room reaction following the game if you guys choose to stay up late and watch the festivities. From Matt Citak, I'm Paul Dottino. Remember, this has been Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. And you can find an archive of this show as part of the Giants podcast platforms everywhere and giants.com/podcasts. We'll see you next time, everybody.